All right, let's talk about one of my favorite movements, the double under. All right guys, so before I even touch the rope here, I want to show you guys how you're supposed to be jumping properly, because it is important to know how we should be jumping off of the ground here. Now, when we're jumping, what I like to think about is I like to think about jumping from the ankles here. We want to get into a nice rhythm. Skipping and double unders is all about maintaining nice rhythm and just staying relaxed as you go. If you are tight and tense, a lot of your muscles will be working a lot harder. So when we're doing this, we want to stay nice and relaxed, and we have to get good at jumping from the ground here. So we want to place our feet directly underneath our hips here. We don't want to have our feet wide. And I like to think that we're jumping from the ankles, right? So when I'm jumping, I'm just getting into a nice rhythm where I'm landing and jumping from the ankles. Oftentimes, I see where people make the mistake is they jump a little bit from more like their knees, or they jump really, really hard at the hips. Say a box jump, right? When we do a box jump, we have to use a lot of hips and we have to get a lot of bend in our knees in order to jump on top of that box. But because the distance is relatively shorter, right? We don't have to jump that high for the skipping. We don't need to use a lot of hips or knees. So when I see people using their knees a lot, they're doing two things. They're either jumping and tucking in their knees and then landing really, really hard, or I see this motion where their hips are kind of shooting forward here. And I'll show it to you from the side for a better view, where you're jumping with your hips, right? So when we're doing this, we want to stay nice and relaxed. You can hear me already getting out of breath while showing you those two jumping movements where we're jumping more at the knees or more at the hips here take a lot of energy. So we want to think that we're just jumping from our ankles and being in a really good rhythm as we're jumping. Okay, so that's the mechanics of jumping. It's important to know this. Now, as I grab the rope here, let's talk about the single under first, where the rope goes around one time. And the things that I'm looking for when we're skipping is we want to keep our elbows close to our rib cage and slightly pulled back. I'll show it to you from the side right here. So close to the rib cage, slightly pulled back. The other thing we want is we want our hands to be at about waist height. Oftentimes, we pull our hands up or we extend our arms out. And if you look at the rope right now, if I do either of those, check the rope, it's on the ground right now when my elbows are tucked and my hands are at about hip height. If I start to bring my hands wider, look at the rope. It comes up pretty high off the ground, which means I have to jump that much higher to get over, right? Or same thing, if my elbows stay, but my hands, if I'm using a lot of hands later where my arms move, look how much higher that rope is, again, which means I have to jump that much higher just to get over. So when I'm doing my double unders, I want to think elbows to the side, slightly tucked back, and I'm going to keep my hands just on the outside of my hips, and you can see I have a nice gentle lay of the rope on the ground here. So let me show you guys a few single skips here. Remember, we want to jump from the ankles and we want to get into a nice rhythm here where my elbows are slightly pulled back here and my hands are at about hip height. It's going to take maybe a little bit more arms on the first one, but then I'm going to lock into that position. Here we go. There we go. Just getting into a nice rhythm here. Elbows are staying close to the body. My hands are hip height, and I'm just spinning at the wrist here. My wrists are doing all the spinning, and I'm just jumping from the ankles here. Now, the double under is not that much different. What we're going to do is we're gonna jump just slightly higher, a little bit higher, and we're going to have to spin faster with our wrist, right? So we don't want to use a lot of arms here. Remember, we're staying relaxed. Our elbows are tucked back and to the side, and our hands are hip height. What we need to do is jump a tiny bit higher and spin a lot quicker. So check this out. I'll show you guys a few single skips first from the front, and then from the side, I'll give it to you in a second. Here we go. So 1, these are just single skips. When I do my double under, spin a little bit faster, jump a little bit higher here, all right? And you just get into that nice rhythm here. I'll show it to you guys from the side here. All right, so skipping, single skips, staying relaxed, going into the double under. So again, it's jumping from the ankles, not jumping higher in the air, right? Not too much higher. I don't need to, when I do my doubles, right, the error I see a lot of is like I need to get up high. You don't need to do that. That's more jumping from the knees. Or I'll show you the other common fault where people use their hips a lot and kind of do like that donkey kick forward here and whoo, out of breath. So again, guys, quick recap. We want to be jumping from the ankles here, staying nice and relaxed. The elbows are tucked back and to the side here. Elbows are about hip height. I need to jump slightly higher, and I need to spin a lot faster with my wrist here. When we are trying to practice our double unders, it is super important that we practice this at a calm heart rate. If you are only practicing your double unders inside a workout or inside a Metcon, it'll be really hard for you to understand the body position. You need to give yourself time outside of your training session or before or even after, when you're not, throwing barbells around or doing gymnastics on the pull-up bar and your heart rate is at 160 and you're on the rowing machine. You need to give yourself time to practice those positions. Ankles, position good with the elbows to the side of the body, slightly pulled back, hands at your hips here, and just practicing the skipping here. Do some drills where you get really, really good at doing a double, then a single, a double, then a single. Then start to practice doing double, 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 double. And even if you keep tripping, and then eventually that double, double will turn into 3 repetitions, then into 4 repetitions. And then from there, you can start to more incorporate that double under into your Metcon. But really, as a baseline to start, practice that outside of your workout and outside of your Metcon, and you're gonna see your skill is gonna get much better. It is like any other movement. It needs time, it needs practice, and it's easier said than done when I'm like, hey, relax and stay calm and just move the wrist quicker and jump just slightly higher. But again, when you put in the time and the effort and the repetitions, you'll be able to get that movement. Don't be frustrated with yourselves. You'll get whip marks, that's okay, but you will get the double unders if you're patient and if you practice those little tips. All right, we'll see you in the next one.